And we are here and live. I'm Yuji is here, and alongside me, as always, is Redis. How are you today, Red?
Okay, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, not bad. I had a pretty busy week, started a new job and all. So yeah, um, I think well, with our just before we start, okay, thanks as always to Streamlabs for not Streamlabs, Stream Beats for intro music, providing free royalty music to our streamers. Very nice of them. And with that out of the way, I think let's crack on. So I think the big news is Lewis Hamilton has finally, if you remember on our first episode, we were talking about how Lewis hadn't signed his contract yet, and we were getting pretty close to. I say Sir Lewis, it's Sir Lewis Hamilton, as he hadn't signed his contract yet, and just this past week he has finally signed a contract. Um, it's actually it for me. It's a bit surprising. It's only a 1 year deal. I thought it would be a longer deal because he's 38, no 36, so he's got quite a lot of years left still in F1. So I personally think he's going to hit centuries in pole positions and races. Why not try to go for 10 world titles? I think it's arguably, well, in my personal opinion, I think he is now cemented himself as the greatest F1 driver of all time. I think going for 10 will pretty much cement. There's still you can still debate that Schumacher, Senna having are in different eras and are as good as Lewis. So I think him going for the 10 in the Mercedes car makes the most sense. Him having only 1 year on this contract is interesting. I'm not sure why exactly it's only 1 year. What are your thoughts on this?
I also find it interesting. Well, okay, I'm just going to say Hamilton, even though that might not be technically giving him enough respect, given his new title. But anyway, I think it is interesting that it's a 1 year contract. I I will also agree with you in the sense that I think he is still trying to go for X number of titles, X more wins. I think so. The idea is that he wants the flexibility to move to another team in 2022. And I feel like he doesn't want to lock himself into Mercedes, even though right now it looks like Mercedes is by far the dominant team, as we kind of covered in the past episodes. There's a lot of rule changes gonna happen in 2022. And I think he just wants to leave like a little bit of leeway for him to maneuver. Because I think if you recall back to when he first moved to Mercedes, he was at McLaren at the time, which generally considered a better team than Mercedes were in the year prior to his move. It was a bit of a shock move to jump. He timed that perfectly. So I think he's just trying to do the same as then, leave his options open.
Yeah, that's true. I think it was 2013 he moved to Mercedes, I want to say. Well, for the 2013
You're better at the history than
history.
me,
I
Yuji.
think
I don't
it's
know.
okay. Let me try. I think it's 2012 or 2013 that he moved over to Mercedes. Um, I think possibly it was 2012. But either way, yeah, he at the time you're right. Everyone was thought like it's like going from Manchester United to, well, I say Manchester United, probably Man City now, Man City to West Ham. No disrespect to any West Ham fans out there, but yeah, I don't think I know any West Ham fans, so it's okay. But yeah, it's like it was considered like, oh, you're going from, actually it is probably the Manchester United to West Ham tag is correct. You could almost say it was similar to going from Manchester United at the time to uh, let's say Leicester City, um, who have who basically won we all remember Leicester City winning the Premier League title. So it's very similar situation to that. The only reason that Mercedes obviously turned out to be more like Man City than Leicester City in terms of their dominance. But if I am Mercedes, I would. If I'm Mercedes, I'm thinking, okay, this is a 1 year deal. George Russell's contract at Williams is up at the end of this year, and he'd be considerably less expensive than Hamilton. So this is why I think Mercedes only want to offer the 1 year contract to Hamilton, so that they could potentially use Russell as a bargaining chip next year. Admittedly, of course, Bottas. he only has a one year contract as well. But I think this is a bit of a bargaining play by Mercedes to say, hey, to try and get a cheaper contract out of Hamilton next year, um,
Mm,
so that they don't have to. Well, they would obviously. I'm not sure how much what the budget cap. Okay, I got it here. The budget cap's 145 US dollars. Um, so I think Hamilton's
Million.
contract is rough. His previous contract was in the region. I think it's all confidential, but it was in the region of 40 to 50 dollars or pounds. I'm not sure what the exact currency is, but it's around that much. So that's a considerable investment in terms of their budget cap. So dropping that down for if they do go for Russell and Bottas instead, that's a massive saving compared to what Hamilton's on. Although Hamilton does deserve it, you're 7-time world champion, statistically the best driver of all time, probably does warrant that pay. But no,
Yeah. Sorry, I thought that drivers were not part of that budget cap.
I think that was true under
I
the
thought it was.
old rule. Under the new rules, it will come under that budget cap.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, that's actually something I didn't realize. Because I was going to say, like when you were talking about earlier, Mercedes using Russell as kind of as leverage almost. I agree with that, but I think the power dynamic. I mean, this is all pure speculation. But the way I read the situation is, I think Mercedes would probably want to lock down Hamilton for more than 1 year, and I don't think the reason why they're willing to accept this 1 year is because Russell's like looks like he's a decent second option, like a backup if something goes wrong at the end of this year. I'm not sure I 100% agree with you in the fact that Mercedes kind of what Mercedes were the ones driving this 1 year deal. Um,
Yeah, that's a fair. I mean, we're not privy to the situation whatsoever. Um, I think you it's hard on one hand, I do agree with you. I'm playing devil's advocate ever so slightly. I'm mostly distracted by this comment by Samidor saying Chelsea are better than City. I'd say look at the league table, Sam, and come back to me when you check that league table. Sorry, sorry, just had to needle you there a bit. But no, I think you're more likely to be correct. I think Hamilton is he's a smart driver. He like earlier, he completely caught everyone by surprise by going to Mercedes at the right time. Is he going to? It'd be interesting to see. Okay, what is his other potential options? And it's Red Bull or Ferrari, really. I think who are the other potential challengers in 2022.
Agreed.
I
Agreed.
don't see him
Yes.
going to Red Bull if Verstappen is there. I can see him going to Ferrari to either partner Leclerc or Sainz. I think Ferrari would be definitely keen on taking Hamilton, and it'll be like they do like to have a marquee driver in the sense of their Alonso, Raikkonen, Vettel. I think that would whether or not that would work with having Leclerc there. I think Hamilton would work with Sainz. I think Sainz is the
Yeah.
type of
Easily.
character that would just be like, yeah, he'd get on and do his job. I think Leclerc would probably want to try to be the number one there, but I think well, anything's possible really. Um, but
If
yeah,
I was Hamilton, I don't think I would have. I don't think I would consider going to Ferrari. It seems like a place that just chews up people. Like Alonso was really good when he went. Nothing really happened. Vettel, at the point he left Red Bull and went to Ferrari, he was pretty good. And
he was a bit more than good. I think people were
yeah,
considering him for he was going to be the Schumi successor and be the all-time number one. But yeah,
exactly. So that good people join Ferrari, and not very good people leave Ferrari. So it's I would be if I was him for some weird superstitious reason, I guess I would be very wary of joining Ferrari.
but it
Especially
is
given that they're.
Ferrari though. That's the thing.
But
We
what's
are
the point
forgetting.
if what's
Yeah,
the point if you're like eighth on the grid?
yeah, but it is the allure, right? It is the all the Tifosi and the Monza. It's like for it's. I mean, I agree with you completely. I would not join Ferrari until they. I mean, they haven't really got that together since God knows when. But it seems like okay, you all is as an F1 driver, you'd almost say this is the dream to go drive for Ferrari. and win for Ferrari. That's like the thing that will win. If I mean, no disrespect to the other teams, but no aspiring F1 driver dreams of winning championships for um, Force India. Well, race Aston Martin now, not Force India. No F1 driver thinks of dreams of winning titles for Red Bull. It's all they want. They dream. I want to win a title with Ferrari. That's what they're dreaming normally. It's I can't see any other drivers really dreaming of driving a car for another team. That's obviously they want to win championships, but when they're young and stuff, that's their goal really. Is to like that's what they're thinking about is driving a red car to a championship.
And basically, it's been an impossible task because the red car's been dead slow.
Yeah, since 2007. Well, it was good in 2008 as well, right? And when I think that was the last time the red car was good. I think I can't remember the better time. I don't think any other times was the red car actually on par with anything else legally, I should say.
Yeah. We are forgetting 2019 a little bit.
Yeah,
But anyway,
it's a topic for another day. That's a topic for when we cover Ferrari, probably. Anyway, let's move on to the next bit of F1 news, I think, which is so I initially it was going to be okay. We were going to talk about how the sprint races were discussing, but it was it's I think a few days ago now. It basically sprint races are now almost. I think they are. I think they're set for a vote, but I'm pretty sure they're going to be
yeah. So I
used.
think I think that F1 Commission meeting was set for the Thursday that's just gone, and what we've heard is that I think all teams and pretty much everyone involved has backed some sort of sprint race setup. So I guess the idea is that, well, whenever I can, like whenever, since I can remember, F1's had qualifying on a Saturday and the full length Grand Prix on the Sunday. Some practice sessions on the Friday and Saturday morning, but kind of those two were the main parts of an F1 weekend. And now the proposal is to have qualifying on a Friday, a kind of 100-kilometer-ish short race on the Saturday, and the normal Grand Prix on the Sunday. Um, Not sure about the practice sessions. Maybe they haven't decided that, or I just didn't read into it enough. But, they're planning to trial this new format for 3 races in 2021. Um, which ones were they? Canada, Brazil, and
I
the
don't
last
know what the
one.
third race is, but yeah, I've heard Canada and Brazil, but I haven't heard. I don't remember or don't remember reading what the third race was. Um, but
Yeah,
just on your practices, I was curious to see because I think we all know Monaco is. I think they have their practices on Thursday, and they have Friday off, and then Saturday is Sunday. So
yeah.
I was wondering, does this now mean that okay, practices will be held on Thursday, or is it just one practice session on Friday morning to get everything set up, do your qualifying, then do the sprint race, and then do and then do I,
That's actually quite
I'm not
interesting.
sure I like this idea, mainly because it doesn't get around the problem of okay, Mercedes are just going to dominate again usually. I thought it was going to be like I thought it was going to be when I first heard about this, I thought it was going to be right. Saturday was going to be a sprint race, which is a reverse grid start of the results on the previous Sunday or the previous race weekend, and then the results of the race would determine of the sprint race would return the starting order on Sunday. Uh, I think this proposal still means there's going to be qualifying on the Friday, which would mean that this generic um, sprint, the Saturday sprint, would still kind of favour the top teams anyway, and it will still favour Mercedes because they'll still qualify in the front, probably sprint away to win, and then they'll qualify on. They'll but win by winning the sprint. They'll qualify on the front row for Sunday. I mean, it does introduce the chance of breakages and that and reliability crashes or whatever, but I just don't see. It shakes it up. I'll give it that, and it's better than some of the old. I mean, there's been previous attempts to shake up qualifying in the past. I remember there was back in 2000 and during the mid 2000s. I can't remember the exact year, but there was a time where qualifying you only had one run, right? And then you would qualify. You'd only had one run, and there would only ever be out one
Yeah,
car on track, and then that was your one run, and then the order you went out in was determined by the previous race. That was a shambles. That was just boring, pretty much. That nothing ever interesting happened in that.
that was really was a really interesting idea in theory, like a one lap shootout. Like everyone, bit like everyone who got into the equivalent of Q3 these days, had one lap only, and then they have to do them in order. Um, I thought that kind of in theory was quite interesting because it does put like a lot of pressure on you, perform and kind of get the best out of the car on that one single lap. And think that it would kind of create some kind of volatility, but in the end, it just proved that no one watched it. It was really boring.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, you're right. Because when it first started, I remember being all excited. Oh, this is gonna be super pressure, and like it's gonna be really exciting. But what it was only really exciting when the front runners were going around, right? When you were going through the mid pack, reference to the title there, when the mid pack and the back markers were going around, no one really cared, and no one really watched because you're not as interested in those people. You're interested in the front, in the front three teams, or just or the top of the mid pack. You're not really interested in like the equivalent of
I'm gonna say
Maldonado
you're
going
not actually interested in the actual mid pack.
in the mid of the mid pack. Yeah. I mean,
uh,
I think probably we would be, but like the average person is not. They're like if you ask the average F1 fan, well, the average fan in general, they're not as interested in the inner workings of Alpine or Haas or how they're doing. I mean, or how what their trajectory is on. They're interested in Red Bull, Ferrari, and Mercedes, and potentially maybe the fourth team, but they're not really. Um, that's who they're interested in.
yeah,
So I think that's why the one lap shootout didn't work, is because people were only interested in certain. They were only interested in watching the top teams go out. Whereas, hopefully, the sprint race will result in more interest for qualifying. I think it remains to be seen whether or not this will be a success. Um,
yeah. I just to go back a little bit on what you were saying. Yeah, I agree with you quite a lot. I just feel like I don't know what this really adds to the weekend, because the quickest cars in qualifying will qualify first for this race, so they'll be at the start for this race, and then they will likely win this race, which means they'll start the proper race first. So what has this extra race in the middle really added? Um,
exactly.
just a little bit, yeah. So I guess people would argue that there's more um, chances of like weird things happening, like a crash or a mechanical failure, or someone might botch the start of one of them, and things like this. I don't know. I just feel like on average it will work out to be the same. Might get some of these random events happening here or there, but the course of a season, it's not going to change a huge amount. I personally also find it quite well. I think I will because it hasn't happened yet, but I think I will find it quite annoying that qualifying will be pushed to Friday. Even though I don't always watch the qualifying sessions, I like for some reason that I've got the ability to watch them if I want to. On a Friday, if I'm at work, I just can't watch it.
Yeah, exactly.
Um,
It's you can't. Well, depending on where it is, but most of the time you will be at work during that time. So I suppose their thinking is that not many people will watch it anyway. So it's people will tune in for the sprint race as the qualifying
but
thing. But
why not have like qualifying and then the sprint race immediately
I mean, yeah, that would
Saturday?
make more better sense to me, and that way you can still. I mean, what is concern as a driver? I would be concerned that hey, I don't have or as a team even, you don't have if you only have the one practice session on Friday, that's not enough time to. Well, I assume teams will find a way, but nowadays, I mean, you have a session for you have your Friday morning session is normally your setup and making sure all your new parts are working and performing as expected as they were in the wind tunnel. The Friday afternoon session is doing your race simulations. The Saturday morning session is your qualifying simulations, and then you have qualifying in the Saturday afternoon and race on Sunday. Now, if you only have the Friday morning, you've got to do basically three things: your race simulation. I suppose your race simulation could apply to both the sprint and race and the actual race itself. So okay, maybe you can get rid of qualifying simulation, but you still need to do your making your initialization, so getting your parts or making sure your new parts are working as is, um, and then doing your setup for the race, sprint, and the actual race, and you only have one session to do that in. So if you mess up your first session, you're pretty much done for the weekend.
Mm.
Like if you have like it's you often see it like Friday morning someone's got some problem with their hydraulics or their engine or whatever. That's their session done, but you do have you still have the afternoon session and the Saturday morning session to get everything ready. But if you don't have those sessions now, that's basically it. You are done for the well. You're not done for the weekend, but your weekend's going to be awful.
Maybe then, well, maybe this is all a complicated ruse to effectively get rid of practice then. Because do you remember there was one race last year where I don't remember exactly what happened. Maybe it rained like a lot on the Friday or something, and like the teams didn't get enough data or running at all on the Friday, so they had to go into Saturday blind, and things were kind of a bit sketchy and a bit kind of unpredictable, and everyone loved it. So maybe this is just a massive ruse to just effectively cut practice sessions down without actually cutting practice sessions down
That's a good. I
explicitly.
didn't even think of that. That's a great point. I'm trying to remember the race that this happened in. I want to say it was Brazil, but I think that's wrong. I don't know why I'm thinking Brazil, but I remember there was a race that. Oh no, no, no! It was Turkey. I think it was Turkey where it just
It's been
rained.
Turkey, but Turkey was interesting because they what was it? They had like a new tarmac surface that
Yeah,
interacted really weirdly with the rain.
yeah,
Anyway, yeah, something like that.
yeah. But yeah, no, I think that's a good point. That yeah, for getting rid of practice to make it more unpredictable, that's it could be a masterstroke. I mean, we'll see. We'll see in these few races, in these three events. Hopefully, it will. I mean, best case it'll shake things up. Worst case it'll still be a Mercedes domination. So
Yeah, I do feel like the one thing I would say on this is, regardless of how anyone feels about the actual change, what I do really like about this is they're willing to put it through for part of the season. And I think that's a really clever way to do it. Of getting everyone to agree to change the format completely from the beginning without any kind of like testing or seeing how it goes. I think this is a really smart way of doing it, just trialing on a few races.
yep, right. I think we've gone over on how long we were planning to talk about F1 this week, but so we almost always go over. We never stick to our plans of right. We're gonna spend. We would like get a bit of behind the scenes of how we plan the mid pack, but like normally this on the Saturday before we go online, we say okay, we want to spend like X amount of minutes on a segment. And so far in all these episodes, we've never stuck to them. We've always run over. It's quite amusing.
Yeah, it is. But on the flip side, you'd rather that than reaching out like 5 minutes short and being like, okay, so what are we doing now?
Yeah. So yeah, yeah. Right. So I think we were now going to talk about. Well, let's flip over and talk about this thing that I kind of found interesting. So let me just bring this up on screen. Boop. And it is this statement. This statement that I found. It, so I have a bit about my car history. I learnt to drive in a manual. My first car was, well, I say first car, I shared my car with my mum, which was a VW Golf, manual turbo diesel, brilliant little car. But I have recently bought my first car, and I was slightly ashamed to admit that I bought an automatic. And the reason being is that I live in London, and just like I've driven around in London in my dad's in both my dad at the time when I first moved to London had a manual. I've driven around in London in that, and then my dad then an automatic a few years back, and then I I drove that around in London a bit, and the difference between the two was just amazing. It was so I could enjoy. I could. You don't normally enjoy driving in London in the city, but like with my dad's automatic, it was so much. I could actually enjoy driving, and I found that I was like, well, why not get an automatic? So this brings me back onto this point. So in 2012, roughly 500,000 cars were registered as automatics. And I agree, Sam. Manuals are definitely better than automatics in Mario Kart, but Mario Kart, yeah, I mean, Mario Kart doesn't observe real world physics at all. Though. I mean, you could drift around, and the whole point in Mario Kart, you can just drift, right? And drifting is not the fastest way to drive around in real life, but hey. uh, well, I lost my train of thought. Okay, yes, there's 500,000 cars that are registered in 2012 were automatic, and then that grew to base well, that doubled it to by 2017, and then I was just checking actual figures in 2020. That's doubled again to about 2.3, 2.4 million. So we know across the pond, autos are much much more prevalent than manuals. Over here, we are better as a whole. I think Europeans enjoy the art of driving more than maybe Americans do, and there is no doubt that driving a manual car, you get more feel. It's just more enjoyable as when you're going for a drive itself. But my question really is: do we think that the ease of automatics, especially in city centres, is will eventually lead to more automatics? Will lead to automatics overtaking manuals in Europe, as it has been in America? We know that people tend to enjoy. People tend to go for things that make their lives easier, and there's no doubt that having an automatic in a city is easier than having a manual. So I wanted to get your thoughts on this. What do you think? Do you think autos will overtake manuals here or not?
Yeah, I think the short answer is yes, basically. Not the answer I would kind of want to hear deep down in my heart, but I think logically and rationally, yes. Especially in city centres, this makes more sense. Then I think the comment you made around America, I think that's kind of what we'll see because I think American cities are very congested and traffic is really bad, generally speaking. Also the roads are very like rectangular and grid-like, and just not very exciting. Um, they also have very like long highway sections where you're just cruising and doing nothing. So I feel like that kind of setup, an automatic just makes a lot more sense. And I think that it's almost like a symptom of the setup. So I think yes. So in city centres, it definitely will. In
Oh,
terms of
we have a question in chat. Sorry to cut you off there, Red. Yoshi 1502 asks, "What are automatics like in rural areas with hilly terrain?" So I can. Do you want to answer this one, or shall I go for it?
I think they're better with hilly terrain. Apart from going down hills where you can't use engine braking as easily.
Yeah, exactly. I
Like,
think I think it was a it's a miss it's a bit of a you think manuals are like I think there's a bit of a misconception here that okay manuals are the way to go in hilly terrains, but it's not the case actually. Especially well, one the dreaded hill start when you all learn the drivers how the hill start is like oh god you gotta that's quite the skill you need to learn when you're driving. With automatics, you don't have that worry at all. I think old automatics. I think this comes from the old automatics from like 70s and back and then, where okay, yeah, they couldn't do hill starts. Nowadays, automatics can manage hills really fine, but the only thing is, yeah, you can't use
wait,
engine
what?
braking going down.
How could old automatics not do hill starts? That
I think
sounds ridiculously dangerous.
there used to be a time, right? I think when automatics were first um, this is admittedly this is from a this is experience from like I think it was a beat up 15-year-old Ford something or other. It wasn't like an Escort, it was like one of those I think it was a knockoff Ford if I'm being honest. It was like some really it's like not it wasn't worth like £50 if I'm being honest. I just remember it being automatic and being absolute rubbish car and just couldn't go anywhere, and it just could not do hill starts to save its life. So that was my experience of that was my early Hardix experience, and of seeing Ford. I think it was a Cavalier or something. It was one of those ones where it's those. It
The
would.
Vauxhall Cavalier.
No, no, no,
But
it might have been a Vauxhall Cavalier, but it was one of those that just could not do hill starts. It
I
admittedly
think
was
you just
beaten
came
up.
across a broken car, really.
Probably.
Like I feel like you wouldn't release this new technology called an automatic transmission if it had just failed hill starts, especially in the UK where there are plenty of hills. Um, yeah, yeah, it's one of those things. Automatic versus manual. It's always a very emotive subject because I feel like, especially car nerds and car people, I think a lot of people just like having more control over their vehicle. I think it it does give you more control. You can do a lot more different things with it, and I think also a sense of achievement to kind of shift gears nicely and rev match and all those technical things. Heel and toe, one's heard of that. Um, I think it comes down to personal preference. I think both of them are good enough, and it's a personal preference thing. And then convenience is key for a lot of people, especially non-car people who just need like transportation. Um,
Yeah, and I think this is a good segue onto the electric cars and the Porsche Taycan, which I know you wanted to talk about. Let me get.
yeah, briefly, because I was thinking. So when you brought up this topic, I was thinking, yeah, okay, we can discuss that. But then there's a chance that this topic won't age well in the sense that when cars go electric, like it looks like they are going to go, um, there won't be such a thing as a manual gearbox, or definitely not in the way that we know it now. Um, Everything will be automatic to a certain extent, because electric motors behave very differently to um, gasoline engines. They can stop and they can also rev very, very highly. So also provide good power across all that rev range. So essentially, the workaround that was the gearbox for petrol engines is no longer needed. And essentially, for low performance vehicles, you can get away with just basically motor, small gearing directly to the wheels, or for high performance vehicles, you might want like a two-speed gearbox, one for kind of acceleration and one for top speed. So yeah, that's kind of why I thought it was an interesting subject to talk about, and then we can move on to this one. So people have known that the Porsche Taycan has been released. Do, would you say varied reception?
I think that's adequately put. Yes, yes. That's. I think that's a nice way of putting it. I think controversial is a good way to actually describe it. It's been. And yeah, I think a lot of people have been it's two extremes. Either you hate it or you love it. It's like it's very similar to Marmite.
Yeah. Well, anyway, so at launch, they launched the Taycan Turbo 4S or just the 4S S Turbo. They launched two different variants, both four-wheel drive, and now they've released an entry-level, cheaper version. It's only two-wheel drive. Um, I basically had this question. I was like, why do electric cars need four-wheel drive?
I
Especially cars like this, which are kind of obviously
they're
kind of
not.
coupe
Yeah,
slash sporty vehicles. Like, why do you need four-wheel drive? And I
yeah.
don't
I
really
don't
know.
think you do, to be honest. Um, yeah, I don't know. What is the benefits of having a four-wheel drive electric car? It's anyone in chat know? I'd be, or maybe that's something
Any,
that we need to feed. Get that'll be next week's
yeah, maybe
episode.
we can do our homework. But it feels like to me the only thing I can think of is if you want to claim a ridiculous 0 to 60 each time, you need four-wheel drive to put that power down for the traction.
Yeah,
aside from that, I really don't see why it makes any sense for an electric car to be four-wheel drive because you're increasing the weight of the system, all the extra motors and gears and things like that, and you're also increasing power draw from the battery, so that will reduce range. And in fact, many four-wheel drive electric cars often tout a feature where you're cruising, they will disable of the wheels. It's a bit like, well, okay, that's great and all, but why not just not have all that stuff in the first place if you're just going to disable it most of the time?
Yeah, sorry, I was just reading a comment by Samadel, which I'm not going to bother responding to that with Sam. um, yeah, so yeah, like you bring up, I think the weight one is the key thing because the downfall of electric cars is the weight of the batteries. That's actually in terms of like in comparative performance, the electric cars actually give you higher, like you said, higher revs. You generally tend to find that. I mean, the Tesla Model MS is a key example of having a ridiculous 0 to 60 time and looking nothing like a car that should be doing a 0 to 60 time of that. So you'd think that okay, got if you just need to if you've already got that performance, why do you need to have extra? If you take out the weight and just make it two-wheel drive, that will surely make one, fuel economy better, and two, your performance shouldn't really suffer as much. I mean, yes, you lose the four-wheel drive traction, but then you reduce all that weight as well. So you could go for top speeds, higher top speeds, challenges better than the four-wheel drive systems can for electric
Yeah, I
cars.
feel like it. Yeah, I feel like another. Just thinking off the top of my head, but it could just be a perception issue. A lot of high performance vehicles, them electric or gasoline, they come with four-wheel drive, and maybe it's just like in these luxury circles, like four-wheel drive is just a thing you need, thing that's just desirable for the sake of
Sake of being.
being. Yeah, it's technically more complicated, it's more expensive, therefore it might be seen as better. And I guess there are like very slight tangential situations where maybe it could be useful. I know that Audi quite often say that the four-wheel drive gives their cars better stability and better kind of traction when it's when it's raining or when it's snowing. So might be 3 or 4 days in the year where it's useful.
Yeah, that's a fair point, I suppose. But yeah, I don't think it's. I still think that's actually a bit. I don't
I think it's
actually agree.
marketing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's marketing.
I
It's
think it's
marketing spiel.
marketing. It's like you've got to like, especially in this case, you've got a car that's like I don't know, 12 centimeters off the ground or something. I
Yeah,
don't think
yeah. It's like
putting two
the
extra
ground
driven
clearance is
wheels
not.
is.
It's not going to go off road anywhere. Yeah, that's not going off road. That's they could clear most speed bumps in the UK, but I've seen some speed bumps that are a bit bigger than that ground clearance, so it'd be a bit of a struggle.
I like the look of the Taycan.
I kind of I like the front. The front reminds me of I can't remember which one of an old school Cayman. The back the back kind of reminds me of the Porsche Panamera. It's very I should I've got it up on screen. I should describe it to anyone who's listening rather than viewing. So the front is similar to the typical Porsche design. It's got the kind of sloping with the. It's very similar to a Porsche Boxster slash 911 front. I'd say it's closer to a Cayman in terms of the front looking design, with the slight difference being that the lights have a. I can't tell if that's an air intake just underneath the front headlights or going off in that weird L shape.
Yeah, I don't know. I thought they were, but that one on screen looks like it's been blocked off with plastic. So it could
It's
be that it's an actual air intake on the higher end models and just a fake one on this one.
in this one, yeah. But yeah, I like the front, and the back end kind of slopes down like a Porsche Panamera. It looks a bit more like a kind of estate-ish car from the back. I can't tell if whether or not I like that or not. Um,
Yeah. I
yeah,
just find
I'm
it a really awkward looking car. I just don't think it looks good from any angle particularly, but it doesn't look bad.
It's non-offensive in
It,
terms of the looks.
yeah, interesting. I do like those wheels though.
The
They look
wheels,
quite good.
the alloys are quite nice. Yes.
They're basically made them quite aero profiled by kind of yes, having very wide spokes that basically make the whole of the wheel like into a disc, which is the best for aerodynamics
Yep.
for drag. But obviously you can't kind of completely fill the whole wheel because then you'd have no cooling for your brakes and other components. So made it kind of as close to a solid disc as possible, but um, kind of they've painted it half black and half silver to make it look more like a normal wheel, which just for some reason kind of like the look of.
Yeah, I agree. Um, the interior is. I haven't already got any comments on it. There's nothing that stands out in the interior here. Is it your normal sporty interior that you have? No
It has
no
a
fancy.
round steering
It
wheel.
has a brown round as opposed to square and or slash squashed rectangle like the Tesla does. Just a normal round steering wheel. Yeah. Well, the side-on profile I think looks. It's the back. It's the back that just ruins the side-on profile for me. We've got the side profile on screen now. The front half basically right up until it gets to the slope of where the um you know what, if like this basically the light where the LED lights are, if this like kind of sloped upwards a bit, it would I think that would make it look better.
I think it might do, but I think it's just so ah, just so many different bits of the car don't look quite right to me that I'm a bit like, yeah, I think you can fix it by just changing one part. I think mainly, I just feel like it's designed to look like a two-door car, but it's a four-door car, so it just inherently looks just a little
I
bit off.
think that's right. It just feels a bit too long, kind of thing. It's the proportions just don't quite mesh. Hmm. Anywho, I think that's probably where we're going to end it on today. Um, anything else before we leave it there?
For me.
Sweet. All right then. Thank you all for tuning in. You can, well, if you haven't watched this all from beginning to end, don't worry. You can catch it all on YouTube. It'll be up tomorrow, the 15th of Feb, roughly around this time. And if you are watching this on YouTube, why don't you just come watch us live and interact with us as we're talking. Follow us on UG is here. And so, and with that, I think we'll call it a day. As always, it was lovely talking to you, Red. And
Guys,
yep, so see you. We are no longer here.